The human race consumes more water producing crops than anything else. Compared with the water we use for irrigation, the amount we drink and wash ourselves with pales into insignificance. With growing concerns about global warming and the increased risk of water shortages, scientists at Warwick HRI are trying to develop plants that can adapt to climate change. In other words, plants that need less water. Heading the research is Dr. Andrew Thompson.
Our main aim is to help breeders to breed varieties which use water more efficiently. So we're using genetic resources to try and work out which genes influence water use efficiency. And by water use efficiency I mean the ratio between the water used by the crop and the amount of food or biomass that's produced by the crop. So we want to be able to produce a crop which has a high biomass, a high yield, but uses as little water as possible. By breeding, there's a whole range of genetic diversity out there. For example, in the brassica crops that we work on, there's different varieties of brassicas or types of brassicas collected from all sorts of different parts of the world with different climates, and they all have a different genetic makeup. Many genes affect the way that plants use water. So by identifying the genes that are important, we can introduce those into breeding programs and basically breed more water use efficient plants. In brassicas we found regions in the genome which will increase water use efficiency by up to 15%, and also we've been using transgenic approaches where we can improve on that further. So we've seen 50% increases in water use efficiency by using GM approaches.
To see how much moisture individual plants are losing by transpiration, they have to be weighed at regular intervals.
What I'm actually doing practically is weighing pots to record the weight difference between the different lines. Here we've got about 6 or 7 different lines replicated highly, and I'm weighing the pots to ascertain the level of transpiration. The plants are part of a population of plants that have been bred conventionally. Their two parents are broccoli and Chinese kale, and there's approximately 100 lines, 114 lines, something like that. We're looking at a selection here that show the most promise for differences in water use efficiency. In previous experiments we've actually shown as much as 15% difference between lines, which is actually quite a decent saving of water.
Okay, Howard, so let's have a look at these plants to see how the roots are developing on these.
Yep.
Our research is focusing on 2 main processes in plants. The first is water loss through the pores in the leaves called stomata. So if we are able to control how the stomata behave and the rate of water loss from those pores, then we can limit water loss and maximise water use efficiency. The other process is water uptake from the soil through the roots. So some plants will explore a larger volume of soil than others, and potato is an example of a weak-rooted plant which has quite shallow roots. And also many potato growers experience compaction in soils. So that's a compacted layer of soil beneath the plough pan. And the roots can't penetrate through that, and as a result they haven't got access to as much water as other types of crops like cereals, which can have their roots penetrating much deeper. Our research is to try and understand the genetics of the way that roots grow deeper and able to penetrate more through soils. So in here we're exploring the genetic control of root development and root depth in Solanum, which includes potato and tomato. So we use both potato to screen varieties for their rooting ability, and also mapping populations in tomato that help us understand which genes are important in this family of crops.
Water scarcity poses a particular threat to Chris Harvey's business. He's a tomato grower based in Worcestershire. His nursery uses a hydroponic system. The tomatoes don't grow in soil at all, but in water mixed with liquid fertiliser.
In vegetable production, if we get these hot, dry summers, you will only be able to grow vegetables in fields that are irrigated. Farmers are totally dependent on rainfall to harvest their or grow their cereal crops, i.e. if it's a very dry summer their cereal yields drop. If it's a wet season they fare more favourably.
Chris will await the outcome of the Warwick HRI research with interest. If scientists do come up with a new, less thirsty variety of tomato plant, he'd definitely consider growing them.
Overall, different types, whether it's cherry tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes or conventional classic tomatoes, they all seem to use about the same amount of water per plant per year. Development within varieties has changed dramatically over the last 20 to 30 years, and I suppose if the scientists could bring in a variety that used 30% less water, it would be great, especially if it enhanced the flavour and the texture of the fruit that it was developing.
Well, the next stage really is to engage with the breeders, to take some of the genetic information that we have forward to breeding companies and see if they can use that in a productive way. And also for our transgenic work, we really need to move into field trials to demonstrate that we have increased water use efficiency at a field scale.